Hello there, this is One Up Indie, and I have a special guest from Kazakhstan here, Zhengis, and he is a developer like me. And let's give it right away to my guest. Please introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you actually do, just really, really quickly.
Hello, my name is Zhengis Tasbolatov. I'm a comics artist from Kazakhstan, and recently I started my game dev journey. So I'm making a beat 'em up game called City of Rampage. I'm planning it to release in 2023.
Just a little bit about yourself, a little bit more into as a deep dive. So, what kind of developer would you say are you? Are you more in the graphics realm because you got, as you said, a qualification in more in the art style, or are you an all rounder? Are you more into graphics, or what kind of developer would you describe yourself to be?
Well, since I'm doing this all on my own, I'll consider myself an all-rounder because I'm doing graphics, I'm doing game design, and I'm doing the coding.
Hmm. Okay, so but what would be for you the easiest to do?
Game design is the hardest because coming up with a satisfying gameplay loop is pretty hard actually. Well, if you're demanding player, it's pretty hard. And uh, programming is just it's a matter of experience and learning. You just study, try things, and you learn. And graphics is just it's actually also about practice because some people they claim they can't draw, but actually it's just matter of learning and like stubbornness.
How did you get into the game developer in quotations hobby, or I assume you want to have this as a job?
Yes, like it's well, it's a passion, and I want it to be my career as an indie game developer. I used to be an artist. I worked as a designer, and I had like enough of working for some people who think that they are smarter than you because they pay you salary. And I decided to go freelance. And then I, at some point, like come across a video on YouTube. It's called five video games made by one developer, solo developer. I pretty much remember only Brain mentioning there, being mentioned there. I don't remember other games, and that's how I find out about engines like GameMaker and like the fact that you can. It's possible to make a game on your own. Like it was a mind blowing stuff to me, and that's how I came to game dev.
So, how many years was that ago?
It was around 2017, 18, I think. Then that's when I bought Game GameMaker Studio 2 on Steam and started like watching uh, tutorial videos on YouTube.
Hmm.
And later I switched to Godot because I had some issues with GameMaker.
All right. So, on that we will come in a few minutes. All right. This is kind of interesting.
Mhm.
So, if people want to reach out to you just upfront, how can they get in contact with you? For example, they think like, hey, I like your art style or what you do, um, maybe learn something from you. How could they get in contact with you?
I have a Twitter. It's called City of Rampage, just like my game. If you type it, you should be able to find it. And I have Instagram with some of my works, mostly just art posted there. It's after my name, Zhengis Tasbolatov. Uh, if you're interested, probably One Up Indie will put up my full name in the
Yes,
description.
yes, I will.
Yes. Hmm.
Okay. All right. Then let's jump into the next portion, which would be I don't know, let's choose. Do you want to go into game development with the bullet points, or you want to go into programming, or right into your game? What topic would be most interesting to start off?
Let's go game development.
Okay, so let's go into game development. So we already discussed how you went into making your games. So why did you ditch GameMaker for Godot? And this is, of course, a little bit biased from my side because my channel is about GameMaker. But of course, I have the philosophy that it doesn't really matter what kind of engine you are using. In the end, what counts is the game being made. So you started off with GameMaker, you had issues, as you said, and you swapped to Godot, which is free, by the way, and has a big community which is religiously trying to convert from GameMaker and other engines to Godot. So what was your experience, the transition from one to the other one? A little bit more detailed, please.
I actually agree with you that any tool is actually good, and it like important. It's your personal skill is much more important. So, and I would rather attract more people from Unity to Godot rather than GameMaker. And my issue with GameMaker was that it had no uh, like working collision system. You had to code it in by yourself, which is like if place meeting and stuff like, and it worked good for pixel games. If your game resolution is like 300 pixels, 400 pixels, it works fine because your physics, your movement speeds are like counted, calculated in two-digit numbers. Like move speed is 10, move speed is 15. Like, but if you work in HD, your move speeds will be like 1,000. My gravity in my game is almost 2,000 pixels, and with speeds like that, uh, tools like place meeting don't work properly because you'll have to use like huge margins if place meeting like 100 pixels ahead like that. And I used to get stuck in walls a lot in solid objects. I was like, I had issues with it, and that's why I switched to Godot. When I started learning GameMaker, one of the first channels that I saw tutorials from, like, do you have problem if I mention them?
No, it's all right. You can advertise everybody.
Okay, have you heard of Heartbeast?
Yes, of course. He swapped also to Godot.
Yes, Benjamin. Yes. So I was watching his videos, and I also saw the video where he compares Godot and GameMaker, and his reasons for switching to Godot. That's why it was in 2018 or 19. I tried. I switched to Godot first time, and I was having some problems with it because just I wasn't experienced as a programmer with codes, and I there was not too much tutorial stuff for Godot back then. And I went to Reddit asking some questions, and people there were like very rude, and that's why I switched, like stayed on GameMaker for another year, I think. And another thing was that GameMaker has a sprite editor. It's a really good thing that Godot lacks. But eventually, I decided that things that work in Godot are really better. Let's say if you're not so good as a programmer, Godot is a better tool for you. That's my opinion.
Okay, so how would you quantify that? So let's say because GameMaker is very user friendly from the get go with with I don't know typing stuff. It's a smaller version like I don't know not Python but JavaScript. So basically the language is kind of easier dumbed down version of that, or maybe like PHP. So and as far as I remember, Godot has what kind of a language is it actually using? It's do you have it's a scripted
It's
language
pretty
also.
much Python.
It's Python, yeah. So it's Python.
Yeah, people say it's 90% Python.
Okay, is it easier to do that in Godot typing, scripting, than in GameMaker for you at least?
No, at first I had problems because in GameMaker you just can reference objects, you know.
As I can just quantify it, so basically what you're saying is GameMaker has an easier reference system. Basically, you just have a dot and then you just reference everything. And Godot does it, let's say, like in Java, where you have singletons and all those patterns, which are a little bit more abstract, difficult to understand. But of course, in the end, you manage to do the same as in GameMaker. All right, that's interesting. So about the collision system, because I guess this is your biggest issue. You say it's out of the box and it's easier, right?
Yes. So The cool thing about Godot that it has a node system and different nodes. Well, the way I see it, it's like a Lego set. You know, when in a Lego set you have specific details that are meant to be like this part meant to be wheels, this part meant to be wings. Like if you're let's say building a plane, and this part meant to be like windows and such. So Godot has like a lot of nodes that already like prefabricated to be used in certain ways, and it has a lot of like implemented inside those nodes variables that are gonna be useful for you to use it in certain way. Let's say if you're for a player object, you need a node called kinematic body 2D or 3D, and it has all the like collision detection system implemented inside. You just need to give certain commands to it to react certain way, and that's it. And that's why it requires less code, um, well, less effort writing code from you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. So basically, it is superior to the GameMaker system, which I do understand. I've seen it in Godot and in Unity, and it's definitely superior to ours. Of course, ours is you can code everything by yourself, but of course, collision system is kind of expensive as far as I remember in GameMaker, and in Godot it's not that expensive concerning performance. All right, cool. So we got this out of the box. Have you done any other game? So for example, for a game jam, maybe something commercial or just hobby projects. So what would be this game? Because it looks already very professional. Did you have any
Thank you.
precursors to that?
No, that this is was my very first project, but I had like this is the third iteration of it. I have like redone and rebuilt it like three times already.
So just starting off with one game, three iterations. But I must say, once again, it looks on the outside extremely professional. But I assume you already, you're coming from the game design, from the artist perspective. So on that part, you are already proficient enough.
In terms of game design, I mean, like designing gameplay mechanics, I just think you need to be experienced gamer. You play a lot of games and you come up with a lot of ideas. Let's say I'm a big Dota 2 player. Well, I used to be. I don't play it like for half a year, and it has like a lot of mechanics inside, and understanding those mechanics expands your like imagination about things, how things should interact and work.
Okay, so basically, this is actually good news for all developers. Play a lot of video games and then just analyze parts of it, what feels good, what feels bad, what kind of mechanics are behind that. Yeah, so I guess this is what we can extract from that one. I guess they do the same. So basically, just play games, but analyze them, not just play them, without thinking about what's the structure behind it. No, that's all right. By the way, if you mentioned Dota, isn't the game a little bit too user unfriendly? Because you have to be competent in a lot of things. So this is not one of those games where you just, I don't know, like Mario, you have 2-3 buttons and boom, you can just go out of the box. You're starting off with one very complicated system from the get-go. Would you recommend just diving into, let's say, mechanically a very deep game like Dota?
Well, yeah, it is difficult. It's just you should not just expect yourself to be like perfect from the get-go. And also another very complicated game like among shooters is Rainbow Six, which I'm also a big fan of. Well, I used to play it a lot, like until the last year also. You just need to time, like I in those competitive games, I see a lot of players. When you kill them, they they get angry, they rage quit, and it's a sign of like it's too important for them that they get so emotional about it, and that should not be approached. That it's just game. You have fun. You let yourself. be wrong, like make mistakes, excuse yourself from this, like give yourself a break. And with that approach, you eventually will learn how to play very complicated games.
So basically, what you're saying, the more competitive a game is, the more love and, of course, on the other side, hate is in the game baked in. Is that a thing, for example, then we can reference actually into your game? Is that a thing which you like to have in your game also? That people just love it, but sometimes they just scream at the TV and it's like, why is this mechanic and so on?
No, I don't want my players be angry about my game. Like I have like some tricky things in the game, but they're not like too punishing. They're actually like meant to for you to have a good laugh because you get caught, but it's not too punishing, so you die because of it, something like that. I want my game to be like pretty complicated, but not too hard, and I just don't want players to be like to be able to go through with just button mashing. If you just button mash, you won't get far in the game, but if you like put some strategy in it, you'll be fine.
Mm. All right. Okay. Got it. So, are you following? I guess this is maybe for Dota and for League of Legends because in the end it's very similar games. Easy to get into, so because you're just using I don't know 4 keys and then the right mouse button and left, and that's pretty much it. But hard to master. Is that your approach also?
Uh, as for hard to master, I can't claim because I'm not too experienced. You know, I mean, as a game developer, as a game designer, I think when players actually try my game, I'll be able to judge if I'm able to make a good system that's hard to master. But I'll pretty much make it like pretty easy to play and easy but not too easy. That's my approach.
Okay, got it. Okay, no problem. All right, then let's go into another thing which I am not aware of. So, how is the market in Kazakhstan? So, basically, in your country, you have a different demographic of people who are playing, how big the industry is, what kind of restrictions, what kind of chances are in your country, let's say, compared to, I don't know, Western countries or, I don't know, even China or India or Africa and so on.
As for the restrictions, let's say I assume you're talking about like government restrictions about video games,
Mm-hmm.
and even though Kazakhstan is considered to be like authoritarian dictatorship, something like that, even though officially it's a democracy, it's a pretty chill government. For chances, it's also no. Like it's safe to say that there is no market and game development industry in the country is non-existent.
Mm-hmm. So basically, do you think that this is a huge chance to create a market just for Kazakh people?
Let's say when I tell somebody that I'm making video games, they ask me like, are you going to sell them or what?" And yes, I'm gonna sell them, and they ask me like, somebody really pays for video games? Like, that's a genuine question, you know. There is no game dev studios aside from like browser games. I tried once get employed in like video game company, but they were making browser games, and the dude who was hiring me, he was like, how was asking me how I feel about crunching, overworking, working for 10, 12 hours a day and stuff. And I was like, no, I don't want this.
Got it. Yeah, I can understand. You know, it's kind of different, but interesting to see that from the perspective of your country. So there's tons of opportunities. What I'm seeing from that. All right, so let's conclude this part. All right, so once we finished with your country, how do you see what kind of future trends are you seeing? So, for example, I see tons of stuff with AI and making images with AI, text, and so on. What do you see? Well, from the point of view of your country and as a fellow well, citizen of Kazakhstan, what kind of trends do you see there popping up?
No, I don't think like if there will be some here, it won't be like related to video games. I think that
Alrighty, so what would you say? Do you still, as a indie developer, because that's, I guess, what you still are, and me as well, do we still need publishers like they used to be?
I think that as a small indie developer making fairly small games, you don't need publishers, but publishers, they have some use. Let's say they can connect you with good music producers for your project. Well, with artists, if you can't cover that direction. So uh, publishers still have good use, but I don't. Uh, it's game dev was never this accessible before. I feel like, and you can do without publisher. That's a good thing.
All right, so let's go to the next part about monetization. I assume you want to sell your game. Will it be just for PC, so basically Steam, or are you going into different directions, let's say for consoles or even for mobile with your game as a plan?
At first, it's of course PC, Steam. Then I'll try get released on Xbox. Maybe get to Game Pass if that's good money there. Maybe. And I heard for indie small projects, Nintendo Switch is almost as valuable as getting released on Steam. Big market there, and yeah, I heard like almost half. I heard that Nintendo Switch generates as much money as Steam for indie games.
For indie games, is that wow? Okay.
So getting on Steam will be like, yeah. Getting released on Switch will be my second priority after Steam, because like Nintendo don't consider small guys worthy of being partners and stuff. So pretty much you need publisher to get on Nintendo Switch.
Let's go into marketing.
So I think that in the current market, when like dozens of games get released on Steam every day, you need a way to stand up like from the crowd,
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's like my visuals. As an artist, I think that my visuals will help me to stand up from other games
Mm-hmm.
out there, and that's like for indie game is just you really need something to be special to look special from the other games. That's the best strategy I think for indie games.
You're not completely wrong in making good-looking games. So here, I completely agree with you. So how did you do your art? Because I've seen your backgrounds and the character animation, and they look really gorgeous. How much time do you have to invest to do such high quality graphics? Let's say, for example, just for one character.
As I said, I'm a professional artist. Like I've been drawing comics, even professional. Like I've been published by Dynamite Comics
Mm.
the past year. Yes. So and but animation particularly was new for me. I like learned a lot during these 2-3 years of active development about tricks in animation, and I but I won't like talk about that here because it's a pretty huge topic.
Mm-hmm.
It's needs its own video. Like I even consider making some kind of a devlog closer to release, maybe a couple months before release. I'll start making devlogs, and there will be like better explanations to
Mm-hmm.
things. So, but as tools, I have I bought an iPad Pro, and it's a really good tool for animating, like on the go. You don't have to sit at home in front of chair, like in front of computer. You can draw it anywhere, anytime when you feel like it, and it has like some decent tools for animation. But I put as much effort in backgrounds as I put effort in animations because I want uh, places to stood up, like feel beautiful, even like it won't be a focus of the gameplay when during the game you won't be having too much time looking at the backgrounds, but it's very important for me. I spent a lot of time trying to make it special. like unique or something, but it's pretty hard because in beat 'em up games, it's like genre has a lot of like hits, and they kind of used all the locations that you can might think of: subways, elevators, ships, docks, city streets, like corporation buildings, pretty much everything that you can think of in like city setting, like it's have been already used by other games, and it's even like fighting on the roof of the trains. It's all been used like a lot, and so I just try to make it like very beautiful because you can be original as location like itself.
So I don't know, just to give an estimate, how long does one, let's say, idle animation for one character, how long do you need for one? Let's say for the main character, the one with the mask.
Idle animation isn't hard at all because well, it depends on your technique, but I just have an like idle pose and I just cut out parts and move them, and that pretty much gets it all done. Like,
But is it a sprite in the end? Is it an image which you just play?
yes, it is a sprite, but aside from like pixel art sprites, which are like in maybe like 32 pixels, like 64 pixels, 128 pixels, my images have in size like over 500 every character.
Wow, that's huge. Okay.
Yes, and my, let's say, main character has at this moment has 155 frames of animation, and it's all one huge spreadsheet which like estimates in like 7,500 to 7,500 pixels. It's a one
Wow.
huge spreadsheet.
Wow, that's really big. That's really, really big.
Yeah, yeah, and by the way, I heard that GameMaker can't deal with such big spreadsheets.
Mm-mm. No, GameMaker just goes up to 4,000, so 4K in one spreadsheet for something
Yes.
interesting. Okay. Is this just a question? You don't have to answer that. Is this not a little bit of overkill? Because I've seen a fighting game which was just hand drawn. It looks beautiful. I forgot what the name of it was, but they had sprite sheets also for that. And that was super, super, super excessive to do, but of course, beautiful. Do you feel that, for example, putting so much emphasis on making, huge sprite sheets is in the end giving you the excellent, unique art which you need for the game? So you need to think of a return of investment. That's why I'm asking.
Yes, the main reason why the development takes so many took so many time, like it's been over 3 years, it's because drawing the animations, it takes like it's most time consuming part, and I have improved in animation while working on it. So for the main character I had redrawn him like 4 or 5 times right now
Hmm.
because I got improved, and the older one was not good enough for me.
Okay, so is this perfectionist?
So yes, to some extent it's a perfectionism, and to some extent it's being stupid because you need to be efficient with your time, and better for you to get gameplay loop and gameplay feel right first than doing graphics the last. But I'm not really following this actually good and really smart advice because I, as an artist, feel like this is my comfort zone, and when I have like problems with development design, even when I can't implement some stuff in the game, I resort to redrawing some stuff in in the graphics spreadsheets, and that's my bane. But yes, but you should do that the last.
Just interesting to see that, but maybe it's not a bad thing in the end. You go, as you rightly said, from the perspective of a artist and a programmer second. Is this game flexible? Because I've seen that you have a 1 vs 1 mode in there. So basically, will this be like kind of Street Fighter, concerning how many moves you're having, but you can actually play it just 1 vs 1 also?
Yes, actually, as I mentioned, I have like I had 3 iterations of this game, and the first iteration was like completely 2D. I mean, no fictional depth, which called like 2.5D, 2.5D. The first was just pure 2D, and I've shown it to some people, and like reception was not so good, then I decided maybe I should try a more classic beat 'em up like Streets of Rage, Final Fight with depth in 2.5D, and that's the version you actually seen in the video I sent you, and that's also an absolute version up because I went back to 2D format right now, and I think of doing like two modes, which is like a campaign, which will be like completely 2D, and arcade mode, which will be a classic 2.5D. So I'm thinking doing both. And as for the like Street Fighter like combat you've seen, it's a boss encounter, and boss encounters will be like pretty much fighting an AI in fighting game. Yeah, because bosses in most beat 'em up games are kind of lame. They're like really lame, and they putting like big emphasis on making my bosses really fun to fight with, and they will be like really able to put some challenge for you.
So how would you do that? Just generally, how is your way of making bosses more interesting? How would you achieve that goal? Because that's difficult to do.
Well, my idea for a good boss is, let's say you have for a character has some abilities and some tricks, like say some cards up to their sleeve, what they say, and certain bosses will be just challenging your ability to use those tricks. Some bosses will be countering your certain moves. There will be some like exploitive moves that are very effective against regular enemies, but bosses will be able to punish you for exploiting those, and you will need to like catch them with let's say some light attack and get them stunned before using some big super abilities on them.
Are you're making your game classically? So basically, this is just in quotation, just a Streets of Rage clone, but just definitely more beautiful. Or are you expanding into territories which haven't been, done? So let's say, I don't know, a roguelite, a light RPG systems. Is there something which you like to implement, or do you want to be strictly on classical terms, how you structure your game?
Yes, I want to do a classical game because honestly, I feel like games that limit your abilities to some point, like require you to level up to get some moves, like those are extremely lame, and I hate playing those. And in my game, pretty much from the start, you'll be able to do everything that the guy does.
So how do you curve difficulty then? Because this is kind of interesting. Because what I've seen, those games have a problem of scaling how hard it is. Besides just I don't know giving the regular enemies just a little bit more HP.
About like difficulty and HP. Well, my first approach is making a big variety of enemy types, and you'll be like facing more difficult enemies closer to the end of the game. And in my game, you have a blocking system, parry blocking, but you can't block enemy who is attacking with a weapon because you don't want to be blocking a knife with your hands.
That makes sense. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, yeah. So you have to like no evade them, like roll. I as a Dark Souls fan also implemented a roll. So if enemy is attacking with a knife or sword, you have to roll under them to get behind them. And uh, I have some enemies who will be like, if you roll behind them, if you immediately don't start attacking them, they will punch kick back like horse.
How do you scale that up for inexperienced players and for hardcore players?
I'll probably have just like a very huge like guide in the pause menu. There is a pause menu that when it activates, you'll just automatically have a guide of explaining you every mechanic in the game pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so basically, interesting. All right, then we are pretty much done with that.